Who have been the Miami Hurricanes MVPs so far, and who's going to step up against Virginia Tech?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Dono, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On this episode with our special guest, we'll talk about the state of Miami recruiting. As you know, Miami's off to a fantastic start. A couple of their rivals are not. Which players are going to step up big time against Virginia Tech? Also, doing my statistical deep dive on Virginia Tech's defense. What areas can Cam Ward and the Miami Hurricanes exploit? And we're going to talk about Miami's MVPs so far. Now, as I bring on our very good friend, Brad Tejeda. We call him Nostradamus now because the last time we spoke to Brad, it was right before the Florida game, and he predicted the exact final score, 41-17. So, all right, Brad, I'm going to take Cam Ward off the board because it's way too obvious. Heisman Trophy candidate for Miami. He's the leader in passing touchdowns. Second most passing yards in the country. Cam Ward is on every award watch list, was just named ACC Quarterback of the Week, Earl Campbell, Tyler Rose Award Player of the Week, Davey O'Brien Award, Great 8. So Ward is the obvious MVP choice, but if I take him off the board, Brad, who do you like on offense and on defense so far as your team MVPs?
First and foremost, Alex, thank you again for having me on, talking Canes football with you and the fans as always. And yeah, man, hopefully I could get another prediction here at the end of the show. But going to your important question, right, through 4 games, it's pretty obvious that Cam Ward is him, right? I think there was a reason why me and a lot of Cane fans had the hashtag stand on business from the beginning. When we thought this young man was possibly going to the NFL instead of going to Miami, we stood on business and we did not move. We did not waver from who we wanted to be this quarterback for the future of the Miami Hurricanes. And there was a reason why Mario and the staff did not take no for an answer, and ultimately is why Cam Ward currently is the favorite to win the Heisman, as we know, with the incredible stats he's going. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But to your question, offensively, I mean, I think it's really hard right now not to say Xavier Restrepo, right? When you look at him through 4 games, he's already got 5 touchdowns. There was probably 1 or 2 more touchdowns that either were called back because, you know, his foot was out of bounds, or just, you know, a missed throw or miscommunication, which is very unlikely with Xavier Restrepo and Cam Ward. But this is a guy that already has 5 touchdowns in 4 games. He had only 6 touchdowns last year. He was 1 yard shy this past weekend of already having 3 out of 4 games with over 100 yards receiving. The guy is, I mean, the ultimate difference maker on any offense. You saw it with any quarterback that suits up for Miami in the past. This guy is always consistent on the football field. We know what he does for the football team in the locker room and off the field. And, I mean, to be quite honest, he still hasn't even touched the ceiling yet. The more comfortable Cam Ward and his connection gets with X, you're going to see some even more crazier passes and catches between the two. This is a guy in X that knows the pockets and defenses to where a guy like Cam Ward can really execute when the play breaks down, as we've seen before. You know, these two make a little bit out of anything. So I like that. But the guy I really want to touch on for offense is Zach Carpenter. I had a chance to talk to Kerry Carpenter and Zach's brother over the weekend at the South Florida game. So shout out to the Carpenter family. And I really, you know, I asked them, what has been like the big difference you've seen from Zach off the football field when you talk to him on the phone, you know, through text messages, the demeanor and how he's carrying himself from Miami than where he was at Indiana and Michigan before that. And they told me it's not necessarily Zach has changed. It's the culture, the environment, and the players that he has around him that has really made Zach take that next level that he hasn't been able to reach. And you're seeing Zach really have an outstanding year, probably the best year he's had in his career so far. And this is a guy that's been very consistent from week 1 to week 4, a guy that has really just performed not only up to expectations that I would say exceed them. Everyone was very high on Matt Lee last year, and when he left to go to the draft, that was one big question mark. Even with a guy like Cam Ward and some of these weapons, what is that center going to look like? And I mean, Zach Carpenter has done more than just enough for this football team. So I think Zach Carpenter is a name on offense you got to look at.
I love that. What about defense?
Defense, you know, I think with defense, it's, again, another obvious name that's very hard to go away from is Tyler Barron from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
Right? This is a guy that has already 8 tackles, 4.5 sacks, probably 1 or 2 sacks that could have been left on that football field that he probably could have had. He only had 6 sacks last year at Tennessee. And this is a redshirt senior that really, this is his last opportunity to really up his stock when it comes to the NFL. And when you hear him in interviews talking, I think it's not necessarily what he's doing on the football field that's changing. I think anyone that puts on Tyler Barron's tape, regardless what jersey he's wearing, the guy really performs. He's an athletic freak. You know, Mario and people on staff compare him to an avatar as far as his body structure. And you see it, you know, for yourself when you're watching on TV or when you see him in person. The dude stands out immediately. But what's really taking this game to another level is what he's doing off the field from a mindset standpoint. He really feels like he's matured to where a lot of this information that was once being taught to him of kind of carrying himself day to day as a college one athlete and just being a real mature man on and off the field. It's really, you know, I think fans kind of overlook those little things and those little aspects that could really take that one player that has all this talent in the world to really get over the hump or really just find that switch to take things to the next level. And I think Tyler Barron is that guy. And I think another guy that you got to mention, you know, I said X and a side guy of Zach. So let me mention my side guy on defense, and it's probably Wesley Bissainthe. Another, you know, great family I got to talk to over the weekend at the South Florida game. And Wesley was a player last year going into the season in fall camp and spring. A lot of players and a lot of people on the staff and fans, right? This was the opportunity that we all knew Wesley needed to take that next jump, not only because we were bringing in other guys like Jalen Alderman and other guys progressing like Popo and others, but Wesley just really needed to make that next jump for himself as well. And not only has he made that next jump, but he's been one of the most consistent players on this defense and is really, you know, you could see from a physique standpoint as well, the dude has really matured and it's really carrying him to new levels on the football field.
That's well said. I want to circle back to Cam Ward because you mentioned the big numbers that Miami's starting quarterback is putting up. You know, so far this season, he's got 1,439 passing yards. He's completing over 72% of his passes, 72.4, which is outstanding. His best, and we're only 4 games into the season, of course, but his best prior year when it came to completion percentage was last year at Washington State, completed 66.6% of his passes. So he's got the completion percentage up. He's got his touchdown average up. He's thrown 14 touchdowns so far, top in the country, to just 2 interceptions. One of those was really on the receiver, not so much on Ward. And Brad, this is a situation where I believe that Ward, as great as he is definitely benefiting from the best receiving core he's played with. But the receiving core is also benefiting from playing with the best quarterback that they've played with, because something else that stands out, and you talked about Xavier Restrepo, he's not the only one in that unit having a really good year so far. Isaiah Horton's having a breakout year, for example. Our guy Gio Milian posted this stat earlier today that Miami has the top PFF graded receiving core in the nation right now at an 82%, which is superb. So they're benefiting from Ward. He is benefiting from them thus far.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's been benefiting from Cam Ward. I mean, but between what he's doing on the football field and us fans being able to celebrate with him, doing the, you know, the Cam Selly, and even, you know, the charisma and attitude that this guy brings, like the swagger and the Babe Ruth-like effects where you're at the goal line and he's literally pointing to the defense of where we're going to run the ball. And we do just that. Like, you got to love those things, right? And he is one of only 12 quarterbacks in the country right now that can say that has thrown for over 15,000 career passing yards. That is a huge accomplishment to have at quarterback. And you've seen it. I mean, we all see with our eyes, and even on TV, it seems like this guy has eyes everywhere between his helmet because his pocket presence, the awareness that this guy has, even when defensive players start to get somewhat close, it's like he knows exactly where they are. He knows exactly how long to extend the plays. And when you have guys like Horton, Jacoby George, Xavier Restrepo, and others that could really extend those plays as well, you got to love it. And I mean, he's had a lot of meat left on the bone too, and opportunities where, as great as these stats are, he can be better. I don't think we've seen the best of Cam Ward yet. I don't think we've seen the best of this offense yet. And that's what's scary. This is the #2 offense in the country currently through 4 games with the quarterback who's second in the nation in passing yards right now. And we have an offensive line that not only didn't give up any sacks this past weekend, but has only gave up 3 sacks all year. And that's without a Jalen Rivers after the first game, a guy like Markel Bell that's really stepped up in his place and has really been performing and doing better each and every game. Very similar to a transfer portal guy like Simeon Barrow from Michigan State. Every single game, the guy gets better. I mean, and we talk about the defensive line and how stacked we were. Can you believe, Alex and Kane fans, we lead the country in sacks, and Ruben Bain has played 2 more snaps than me and you this season.
That's right.
Wild.
Crazy.
Wild.
Yeah,
this is the level of talent that Mario and the staff has been preaching and talking about as far as building from the ground up. Florida and Florida State fans can't say the same, because you got to be able to recruit, develop within, and also get the right guys that can buy into your system and really excel to the next level for this program. And you're seeing this team hit it on all cylinders, and it does start with #1 Cam Ward.
We got Brad Tejeda with us, and when we come back, I do want to talk about a couple of trends on Virginia Tech's defense, maybe something Miami can exploit this coming weekend, Friday night at Hard Rock Stadium. And also, if we can predict, not only I want Brad to predict the score, because, you know, I'll also get the Powerball numbers from you before we're done here, but I want the score prediction from Nostradamus over there. If there's any recruiting notes happening, I know that this is kind of a quieter period, but you see the recruiting sections have been loaded every time Miami plays. So you guys want to keep it locked right here. We got Brad Tejeda with us. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Keep it locked. My friends, I'm only getting started with 5-Hour Energy. Yeah, during football season, I need it. Grab a 5-Hour Energy shot to stay alert to watch all your favorite games. I'm going to be pounding 5-Hour Energies in a couple of weeks when Miami plays at 10:30 p.m. at Cal. If you stayed up late to watch a game the night before, take a 5-Hour Energy shot in the morning so you can start your day. With 0 sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There's a flavor for everyone. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and it's delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer only valid till September 30th on one order, cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. You'll be glad you did. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We have Brad Tejeda with us. We'll talk a little bit later about the awesome stuff that he's doing now with Caneswear, bringing you guys more content. It's a beautiful thing. So, you know, Brad, obviously Virginia Tech, they've not been great so far this year. They're 2-2. I like what our guy CC Maui Noah said, that the record is misleading. It's a talented football team. In fact, they return a higher percentage of last year's talent than any other team in the conference. And even though Kyron Drones, who's Cam Ward's cousin, by the way, the Hokies quarterback, he's gotten off to kind of an uneven start. Very talented player. And if he wakes up this weekend, you know, we may have to worry about that. We'll see. But I noticed a couple things about Virginia Tech's defense, Brad. They are good statistically against the pass. They rank 28th in America. That's very good. They only surrender 160 passing yards per game. Of course, they've not faced a quarterback like Cam Ward yet. You know, Vanderbilt and Rutgers, so they lost both of those games, are the toughest challenges that the Hokies have had so far. Their rushing defense, though, and so far, like, teams have, for whatever reason, teams have wanted to load up the box against Miami. So Cam Ward's been more than happy to pick everybody apart. But Virginia Tech's rushing defense has not been good this year. 103rd in the country. They give up 181 yards per game. So I'll be interested to see how Virginia Tech approaches this game. If they load up the box, if they don't, maybe this is a game when Miami does more damage on the ground.
Yeah, you brought up a good point, Dono. Especially Cane fans that, you know, kind of been, you know, foot on the gas when it comes to guys like Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher of really, exceeding expectations of what we thought this running game would be. To your point, you go turn on the first half of every football game we played this year. They're stacking the box, right? They are trying to test Cam Ward for whatever reason. I don't understand why. If you turn on the tape, I meat it's pretty clear the guy can extend plays and make any throw that you need out there. And with the receiving core that we have currently, I don't know why you'd first stop at stopping the run. But I think going into the Virginia Tech game, like you brought up, they have a really good passing defense compared to the rushing attack. And I think this is going to be one of those football games where you are going to see guys like Mark Fletcher, Jordan Lyle, A.J. Allen, and even Chris Johnson. I think this could be a big opportunity where we start to create some more bigger run opportunities and not having to wait till the second half. But all in all, I think that the defense for our Miami Hurricanes is what I'm going to be looking forward to watching, right? Not only because from a statistical standpoint, what we've been able to do, especially in the second half adjustments of football games. You saw this past weekend, we were trailing for the first time in a college football game in the first quarter against USF in Tampa. And right after that first half was over, not only did South Florida not get many points or yards, the adjustments we made, we are outscoring teams in the third quarter 59-3 so far through 4 games. So I want to see that continue, because looking at the offense and the tempo that South Florida was running in the first half, it did create a little bit of fits for our defense. And as athletic as Brown is for South Florida, Kyron Drones is even a little bit more athletic than him. And I also think he's a lot more accurate throwing the football, which I think really could have benefited a guy like Brown at USF if he was more accurate this past weekend. They probably could have had a little bit more bigger plays, being able to create those runs. So I want to see guys like Kiko Mainoa and some of these other guys that, even though he did lead the team in tackles this past weekend, there were some opportunities where it was a one-on-one matchup between him and the quarterback. And, he kind of had him on skates a little bit. So I want to make sure that one-on-one tackling, and when you get those opportunities, you get guys in the backfield. I loved what I saw from guys like Popo and others creating pursuit. So all in all, I think the QB spy, just making sure Kyron Drones stays controlled. To your point, this is Cam Ward's cousin. This is a game that he circled from the beginning of the season. And I think this is going to be a Cam Ward show when it's all said and done.
And by the way, Ward, he said today that he and Kyron have not spoken this week. So I guess the week is young, but I guess so far it's been all business heading into Friday. I'm sure they're going to be doing play. They're going to hug each other, I'm sure, maybe a little friendly trash talk around the sidelines, but it's all business so far this week. Is there anybody, now you mentioned names of some players, including some of Miami's running backs, who could end up with big gains in this one, but is there anybody you look at and say, so-and-so might really step up or break out this weekend? Because I'm thinking, Brad, on who haven't gotten in to the end zone yet. I'm going to predict a Riley Williams touchdown this week. Okay. Big 6'6" target in the red zone. I think Ward's going to find him this week for a touchdown.
I like it. I like the pick. I think we need to continue to keep those tight ends going. And I think a guy that's going to have to do that is Cam Ward, right? Like I just mentioned, I think Cam Ward is going to continue to do what he does best. Like I mentioned before in the earlier segment, there was a lot of meat left on the bone in that South Florida game. And I think he's a guy that is harping on those little mistakes and knowing that he's going up against Virginia Tech, against his cousin, and it's also the first ACC game, not only for Cam Ward, but what you're really seeing from not only the staff and these players when you hear interviews, they're not taking this opponent lightly, not only because it's Virginia Tech, who a lot of people, especially in the media, ACC media as well, projected the Virginia Tech Hokies to win the ACC this year before a football game was played, right? So it's not like this is just a pushover team. It's the first ACC game, and we know how important this is. If we want the ultimate goal of going to the playoffs, getting to where we need to do, it starts with ACC games. So I like the approach to what we're doing. But besides Cam Ward, Mark Fletcher, I like Isaiah Horton and even JoJo Trader. You saw JoJo Trader come in a little bit at the end of that South Florida game. I think Jacoby George is not, I wouldn't say injured, but I think he is dealing with a little bit of an ankle issue that's been there, I think, since Florida, if I'm not mistaken. I do want to see more opportunities from JoJo Trader. I think this could be a good opportunity to have a guy like him that really shine this game. So I think JoJo Trader might get a touchdown. I like that on offense. And then on defense, Simeon Barrow. I think as great of the games as he's had so far through 4 games, I think he's going to have an even better game this year. If Ruben Bain comes back and then you pair him with a Tyler Barron and Akeem Mesidor and all these other guys, I think it's going to be impossible to hold these guys inside the tackles. And I think that's where Kyron Jones is going to want to make his living when it comes to running, using his big body frame, similar to Jalen Hurts. And I think that's where someone like Barrow could really step up.
This is really good stuff. So we got to get the score prediction when we come back. And also, if there's any recruits that we're keeping our eyes on, including maybe some possible flips out there. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, we've been winning money and having an awesome time so far in football season with FanDuel. Not having as much fun betting on the Miami Dolphins as we are on the Miami Hurricanes, but thankfully the Canes have been covering spreads, kicking butts, and taking names. And hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen or your second listen. We were on earlier today. We're doubling up. That's why I got the espresso shirt on. I've been pounding them. We're doubling up on this episode of Locked On Canes on this day of Locked On Canes. We got our guy Brad Tejeda with us. And guys, make sure for your next listen, you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I take you around the conference, the good, the bad, and the ugly every single week on Locked On ACC, available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. All right, so Brad, can you give me the score prediction? Because you nailed it, 41-17 against Florida. If I had bet that exact score, I would be on my private island somewhere. Unfortunately, I did not bet your exact score prediction, but maybe I'll do it for this Friday.
You and me both, my friend. And actually, I've been keeping track of my score predictions through every game so far. And I've been either over or under 6 total points for every game so far, which is pretty crazy.
Good.
So for this game, I think we're getting close to that 50-point average. If I'm not mistaken, I think we're averaging 50 points through 4 games. I will say that we're going to get right around there, and I think it's going to be 49 Miami to 13 Virginia Tech. I'm going to go 49-13 Miami. Depending on the weather, if we get any type of rain, it could be a lot more running the football than what we want to see. But knock on wood, I'm hoping that most of the storm comes where I'm at currently, but I won't be here. I'll be at the game, obviously, but I'm going with 49-13 Canes.
I like it. So, Brad, of course, you follow recruiting very closely. I know we've all been very focused on what's right in front of us, and that's the football. Oftentimes we hear about possible flips, maybe at wide receiver, like Josh Moore from West Broward, who's a Florida commit. There's a lot of turmoil in Gainesville right now, as you know. I even still keep hearing the name Dallas Wilson from Tampa, who's committed to Oregon. Obviously, Oregon's a long way from Tampa Bay, but he did grow up an Oregon fan. He's been saying the right things about Oregon. You hearing anything on possible flips? These are 2025 kids, or even anything on 2026?
Yeah, I mean, as y'all know, that anyone that follows recruiting, the most recent news we kind of got that was really exciting was 2026 commit Malachi Toney from American Heritage ended up reclassifying, and now he's in this class, which now bring us to 22 commits, I'm mistaken, currently in this class. And with only 4 games into the season, you already got the majority of your guys locked in. So talking about the flip approach of some of these guys that we're potentially wanting to flip now that games are being played, and a lot of these, not necessarily promises, but necessarily, stamps of approval that we told these recruits were going to happen on the field. Now it's starting to translate it. So it's making the recruiting approach a lot more easier, especially once, we get closer to playoff time and the Loafers step out in December. That's where things are really going to get tricky. So even though we're talking about some of the flips that come to Miami, you also got to, keep an eye out on some of these guys that are currently in the class that may end up having to get kicked out and go to other programs, unfortunately. But to your point, going into flips, when you get a guy like Malachi Toney to pair with Dalen Upshaw, the wide receiver room, it starts to slim down a little bit from a recruiting standpoint. You missed on Jamie French that went to Texas, obviously, and you missed on Vernell Brown, who obviously stayed at home in Gainesville in Florida. As bad as Florida is, I think he's one of those few guys that is probably going to stay loyal to Florida. But you brought up a great point with Josh Moore out of Miami Palmetto. I think at the time of his recruiting decision, I think it made more sense to go with Florida, just from the aspect of kind of what they were promising, what he was getting in return. As y'all know, with recruiting, you got to be able to lock in your spots. And if timing is everything for you, it could really benefit you. And at the end of the day, we know these commits, they're just verbal. So you could still enjoy the process and still end up going to another program. And all in all, if it benefits the recruit and the family, you got to go ahead and do that, right? I think Josh Moore is a guy to look at. You mentioned Dallas Wilson as well from Tampa. He was at the Miami game, if I'm not mistaken, against South Florida. He's going to be a more tougher one to flip, but I do say keep an eye on Tyler Williams. Tyler Williams committed to Georgia. He's another guy that I know Miami has been eyeing from the beginning. You talk about needing that big body wide receiver. You already got Tony and Dalen Upshaw. You see what we're starting to do with guys like Isaiah Horton. Using his body very well in the system. I think Tyler Williams is really liking what he's seeing at Miami this year. He's a guy to watch. And on the defensive side, guys like Derry Norris from Spruce Creek, Florida, who is a Georgia Tech commit. As y'all know, when he committed to Georgia Tech live, he kind of, dissed Miami in a way on video that kind of rubbed fans the wrong way. You got to understand, this is a kid that was just enjoying his moment. And luckily, the staff doesn't really care about those little things. And when you turn on the tape so far through his senior year, he's really standing out, and he's a guy that could really be a great fit at Miami. So Derry Norris, Elijah Griffin is at the top of the board, as y'all know. Let's see if he visits the Florida State game. He is one in particular where I would be very close to just following the visits. If he doesn't visit Miami throughout the season, I think it's very unlikely he comes here. And then last but not least is Jarquez Carter out of Newberry, a guy that was, a very heavy Miami lean until Ohio State kind of came in and grabbed that one. He's a guy that's still eyeing Miami right now. We have his teammate in Micah Newton, who I interviewed as well, and talking to some of the coaches recently. Jarquez Carter is loving what he's seeing from Miami, and I think he wants back in, if I have to be honest. So he's a guy to watch out for. And Kellen Wiley out of Armwood, the linebacker.
I love it. And hopefully, and Tyler Williams is at Armwood now as well. Yep. So hopefully, and of course, Gerard Pringle, who's already committed. So let's just bring all the Armwood guys down. I'd be cool with that. That's a talented group. Well, we love the time we get to spend here with Brad Tejeda. So it was 49-14. I'm going to take that
13,
right over
13.
49-13. Okay. I want to make sure I get that right. 49. By the way, I was pretty close on my South Florida score prediction. My final prediction was, and people thought it was like a homer prediction, like, oh, it's way too much. I predicted 45-14 against USF. It ended up being 50-15. So if anything, I wasn't bullish enough. People said I was like too high on Miami heading into that game. This is a different Canes, my friends. Brad, tell people what you're doing now with Caneswear. I love how they've been putting out content, and you've been a big part of that.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been doing some great things with Brett and the Caneswear team. We got our own YouTube channel over at FTSN Network, Caneswear Daily Podcast. We do a live podcast with me, Brett, Cliff, Armando, and tonight we'll be having Malik Rozier. We do that every Tuesday live at 8 o'clock. A lot of great fan interaction. And then now with me on board, we're going to be doing a lot more content, whether it's live or more fan interaction, getting more involved with recruits or player interviews as well. So look out for that, at least 3 or 4 times a week on the Caneswear Daily Show, only on FTSN.
That's great, man. I'm happy for you and some of my favorite people, because I love Brett at Caneswear as well. In fact, most days when you see me wearing Miami, I'm wearing my caffeine gear today, but most days I'm wearing something I probably got at Caneswear. So awesome stuff here by Brad Tejeda. You want to follow him on X at Tejeda Brad. And another thing, Brad, was it you who told me when we last spoke weeks ago that I should get on TikTok? Because I remember meeting, like, I met a young Miami fan, like a teenager at in Gainesville, who told me, like, oh, I've seen your stuff on TikTok. I'm like, I'm not on TikTok. So it made me realize people were stealing my stuff and posting it on TikTok. So the best way I can take power away from those TikTok pirates is by getting on there myself and posting my own content. So for the past 4 days, I am on TikTok. You can follow me, and please follow me because I have less than 100 followers, so I'm still very embarrassed. But you can follow me. I think I'm at Alex Dono Canes is where you find me on TikTok. And if you want to, I got to connect with you as well if you want to plug yours.
No, I don't have a TikTok, unfortunately. I got too much time on my hands, man. But yeah, just Twitter, man, is where you can find most of my stuff at Tejeda Brad, man. Other than that, I'm on the Caneswear Daily Show every Tuesday and about 3 or 4 times a week as well.
All right, so I got to get you to join TikTok so I can have another follower on there. It's what I need. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Thanks so much to Brad. Thanks so much to all of you. Make sure you hit that like button on the way out. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes. We're part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.